It was 5:35 a.m., and I was sitting in a booth at the country inn. I sipped my coffee and waited for Rachel to bring me my bacon pancakes. As I refilled my cup from the coffee pot on the table, I thought about what brought me here at this early hour. I was usually there 3 or 4 times a week, but never this early. It was actually the first time I was there that the doors opened at 5:30. I probably should have just gone home and went to bed, but I didn't because I knew I wouldn't get enough sleep, and even if I did, only God knows what my dreams might have been like. It was a story that happened 100 times a day somewhere on the third planet from the sun. A guy leaves town for 4 days, returns home 2 days early, and discovers that his girlfriend is not alone. I wondered how many times in these hundreds of stories the other man was a family member. I called Audrey to let her know I'd be home that evening instead of Saturday, but she didn't answer the phone. My flight arrived at 7, and by 8, I was already turning into the parking lot near our apartment. As I came around the bend, I saw Audrey come down the steps and get into a car that I recognized. I slammed on the brakes and stopped before I got close enough for her to see me and watched as she slid across the seat and kissed the driver. To say I was surprised would be an understatement. Audrey always told me that she couldn't stand my brother. According to her, he was an arrogant asshole who thought his shit didn't stink. So why did she get into his car and kiss him? Sam started driving, and I let him get ahead of me a little, then followed him far enough so that he couldn't see me in the rearview mirror. They pulled into the parking lot of Duke's Steakhouse, parked, kissed, and then got out of the car and entered the restaurant. I was familiar with the Duke's location and knew there was no way I could follow them without being noticed, so I found a parking spot where I could see Sam's car and then settled down to wait. When they came out, they got in the car and hugged for about 5 minutes, and then I followed them to The Barn, which was a country western restaurant with a live band. As with the Duke, I was familiar with the insides of the barn and knew there was no place I could sit without being seen. So I parked again, where I could keep an eye on Sam's car, and settled down to wait. They stayed there for 2.5 hours, and when they came out, I followed them again. This time they headed to the Saddletree Motel. Sam checked in at the front desk, and then Sam and Audrey went into room 107. I gave them 15 minutes to figure out what they were no doubt there for. Then I walked over to Sam's car and let the air out of all 4 tires. Then returned, got into his car, and waited for them to get out. I wanted to see how Sam could cope with 4 wheels at 1:30 in the morning. While I was waiting, I wondered why. Since I wasn't expected for 2 more days, they didn't use the bed in the apartment, and then I realized that they couldn't do it because of Eva, Audrey's sister, and Sam is damn sure he couldn't take Audrey home with him because Mom and Dad would know since he still lived at home. Anyway, sort of. There was an apartment above the garage, and that's where he lived, and you could see the apartment from the kitchen window, and Mom or Dad would damn sure recognize Audrey. I was also wondering how it started and how long it lasted. I usually went out of town every 4 to 5 weeks or so, and I wondered if she did the same every time I went away. After a couple of hours, I resigned myself to the fact that they were staying there for the night, stopped my vigil, and headed to the apartment. When I saw the sign for the country inn, I decided to stop for breakfast. I parked and walked up to the door just as Rachel was unlocking the door. I met Audrey during my senior year of college. She was a sophomore, and normally we would probably never have met since we didn't have any classes or friends in common. It was a Friday night fraternity sorority event that brought us together. In addition to members of my fraternity, there were members of other fraternities. Halfway through the party, I was heading to the bathroom and had just reached the top of the stairs when I heard, "Let go of me!" I turned the corner at the top of the stairs and saw a guy dragging a girl into one of the bedrooms. He wasn't a member of my fraternity, and I didn't know him, but I knew I had a responsibility to make sure his actions didn't bring our house into disrepute, so I walked up to him and told him to let the girl go. He turned to me and said, "Fuck off, asshole. It's none of your fucking business. Where I grew up, no one took the time to teach you the Marquis of Queensberry rules. Our rules were, Hit first, hit hard, knock him to the ground and don't let him get up. The word deed was still hanging in the air when I kneed him in the genitals, and as he bent at the waist, I elbowed him hard in the head. You can hurt your hand if you hit him without padded gloves. And he fell. I turned to ask the girl if she was okay, but all I saw was her ass as she hurried down the stairs. I shrugged and went to the bathroom. When I came out, the guy was sitting there shaking his head to try to clear it up. I went downstairs, called a couple of brothers, told them what happened, and we went up to get the guy out of the house. Ben recognized him and went to get a couple of his fraternity brothers to take care of him. I looked around for the girl but didn't find her, and after a couple of days I forgot about this episode. 3 weeks later, I was sitting at a table at Annie's Cafe having lunch when a girl approached me and asked if she could join me. She seemed vaguely familiar to me, so I invited her to sit down. She saw me trying to recognize her and said, "You don't remember me, do you? You seem familiar to me, but I can't remember you. Party at the Kappa house. You saved me from that Neanderthal. I didn't get a good look at you, and when I looked for you after it was all over, you were already gone. I should have thanked you, but I got scared and ran away." Then I got the story. She actually didn't want to come to the party because she had heard horror stories about what happened at frat parties. Things like date rape drugs being used on unsuspecting girls and other dangers, but her sorority girls had convinced her that nothing like that had ever happened at Kappa. So she went and everything was fine until she needed to go to the bathroom. The guy caught her leaving the bathroom, called her a tease and said he was going to teach her a lesson. Then you showed up and saved me. So what did you do that made him think you were a tease and were teasing him? Nothing. I just tried to be friendly to everyone who was there. Earlier in the evening, a guy was hitting on me and I let him know that I wasn't interested, but I couldn't think of anything I could do that could be construed as teasing. I should have thanked you for coming to my aid, but at the time, all I could think about was getting the hell out of there and getting as far away from this place as possible. This is the first time I've seen you since then, so I came over to express my belated gratitude to you. Oh, and by the way, my name is Audrey. Well, Miss Audrey, I accept your belated gratitude, but if you are truly grateful, I think you should go on a date with me. At least once. I would like that. When? Are you free tonight? Yes. Will it be okay at 6? Great. That date led to many more, and by the time I graduated 3 months later, we were a steady couple. We started making love after our 10th date. Neither of us were virgins, so there was no awkwardness. We seemed to have a great time together. I learned that Audrey had a strange side to her character. She liked to make love in places where there was some risk of being noticed. It turned her on, and her arousal turned me on. We were never caught, but came close a couple of times. She first met my family at a graduation party my parents threw for me. Mom and Dad took to her immediately, and my brother Sam couldn't seem to take his eyes off her. I didn't think about it at the time. Audrey was a beautiful girl, and I was used to men watching her and wanting her to belong to them. Before I wanted to take Audrey home, my sister pulled me aside and said, "You're very lucky, bro. Don't let her leave." That night when I drove Audrey back to the dorm, I proposed to her and she said, "Yes, but not until I graduated. As soon as I receive my diploma, I will walk down the aisle to you." I thought it was reasonable, even if I didn't want to wait that long. I hadn't found a job yet, so I went with Audrey when she went home for the summer and spent a week with her family. I liked her parents and little sister Ava, and they seemed to like me. At the end of the visit, I went home to begin my job search. Audrey stayed with her parents until the end of the summer holidays, so I was pretty much able to focus entirely on finding a job. Luck was on my side, and I found a good job within a week of starting my search. Along with my new job, I changed my lifestyle. It's time for me to cut the apron strings, so to speak. I was living at home, and now that I had a job, it was time for me to find my own place. My graduation gift from my parents was a check for $10,000, and I used part of it to pay the first and last month's rent and security deposit. I used some of the rest to furnish the apartment. I talked to Audrey almost every evening, and while telling her about the new job, kept mum about the apartment, intending to surprise her with it when she returned to school. Audrey returned to school 3 days before classes started. I met her at the airport and headed to the apartment. When I parked in the parking lot, she asked, "Why did you stop here?" "I thought that since we haven't made love in over a month, you might want to try my new bed." "Your new bed?" "Yeah. Now I live here." Once inside, I led her through the rooms, leaving the bedroom for last. Once in the bedroom, I casually mentioned that there was plenty of room in the closet for her things, and that there were still 3 empty drawers in the dresser. "Of course, if you'd rather live in a dorm than here with me, I'm sure I can fill them with something." "When can I move?" "Well, I guess we could go get your things now instead of making love now and then going to get your things later." "Oh shit. Decisions, decisions, decisions. What the heck? I think since we're already here, we could make love first." She must have been just as horny as I was, because she damn near fucked me to death. After a few rounds, we snuggled together and fell asleep. The next day, Audrey drove me to work and left my car to move her things from the sorority house to her apartment. We stopped and had dinner after she picked me up from work, and then we went back to the apartment, and she did everything she could to drive me to the point of impotence. The next year passed as we adjusted to each other's almost constant presence. As with all new full-time partnerships, there were hiccups along the way. Audrey was still a full-time student with class schedules, projects, and study groups to work with, and she still belonged to her sorority and had to attend their events. For my part, I sometimes had to work late, work on Saturdays, and occasionally travel out of town on business. But we made it through, and it gave us a very good idea of what life would be like when we got married. Audrey still insisted that marriage would not take place until she finished school. I didn't care because, as far as I could tell, we were already married and just didn't have time to complete the paperwork. I had some earned time off, so when the summer holidays came, I was able to go to her house with Audrey for a week, and then I had to go back to work. I spent a rather miserable 5 weeks alone. We actually talked on the phone 2 or 3 times a week, and we exchanged a hell of a lot of "I love you" and "I miss you." When Audrey returned 2 weeks before school started, we spent most of our time in the bedroom trying to catch up. One of those nights, as I lay next to her, satisfied as hell and tired of what she had just put me through, she said, "I need a favor. I need a really big favor. After what you just did to me, I don't think I can refuse you anything." "What's the matter?" "My sister Eva will arrive on Saturday. She will begin her first school year. Would you mind if she stayed here with us until she gets back on her feet?" I liked Eva, and since the spare bedroom was not in use, I had no reason not to let Eva use it. "No problem, honey, but you may have to put a rag in your mouth when we make love. You can be a little noisy, you know, and I wouldn't want to disturb Eva's sleep." "I'm not that noisy." "Oh, yes, it is so, and I will now prove it." And I did it. We met Eva at the airport and hosted her with us. There were some changes made to the way Audrey and I lived. Adjustments needed to have Eva with us, but things soon got better for us. Eva was a very beautiful young lady, and it wasn't long before she started dating, and her going on dates gave Audrey and I a lot of alone time, enough to make sure our sex life doesn't suffer. And then the trip began, which allowed me to return home 2 days earlier. I froze over my breakfast. I needed to go home, shower, and get ready for work, but I wanted to give Eva enough time to leave for class. If she had still been there when I got there, my natural question for her would of course have been, "Where is Audrey?" What would get her into all of this? She knows I was supposed to be out, and she knows Audrey didn't come home last night, and I'm sure she's smart enough to put 2 and 2 together and come up with the right answer. But then again, maybe Audrey gave Eve a perfectly good excuse. But it didn't matter what story Audrey told Eve because I knew the true story. Among the thoughts I had during breakfast was what I was going to do now. That Audrey was the story was a given, but what were the mechanics of the breakup supposed to be? Confrontation? Or should I just pack up her things, put them outside, and not bother talking to her? Then, of course, there was my brother. What was I supposed to do with him? This was a much harder question to answer because whatever I did with him would inevitably involve my parents. They will almost certainly want to know why my relationship with Sam has changed. They'll want to know why I won't attend family functions if Sam is there, and I'll have to tell them. I wouldn't lie to them, so they would know the cold, hard truth. I didn't stay long enough, and Ava was still in the apartment when I got home. I saw the expression on her face. It turned pale, but I always thought it was a figure of speech until I walked in and Ava saw me. Her face actually turned pale, and that told me she knew what Audrey was doing. What she didn't know was that I already knew what was going on. So my question, how long has she been doing this, took her completely by surprise. She expected the question, where is Audrey? And probably already tried to come up with a good answer to this question. My question told her that no lie would work, and I could see in her face that she knew it, but I was not prepared for her answer. As far as I know, she never stopped. She never stopped? What does it mean? She had steady boyfriends throughout high school, and she cheated on every single one of them. When you came home with her for the summer, she acted decently, but as soon as you left, she started dating guys she'd known since middle school. I don't know much about it. I know for sure that every time you go on a trip, she meets someone. Sometimes she comes home at night, but usually she's gone by the time I leave for school. I was going to say something like, I thought you liked me enough to let me know what was going on, but I quickly realized how stupid that question would be. She and Audrey were family, and the old saying that blood is thicker than water would be true in this case. I guess now that you know you're going to kick her out, you are thinking right. What is my time frame? Your time frame? How much time do I have to find a place to stay for the night? Spend as much time as you want. I'm kicking out your sister, not you. I know it might make your relationship with her a little awkward that you're here after she left, but I don't see any reason to punish you for what she did. How you handle this with Audrey is up to you, but she won't be here when you get home from class. I'm going to pack up all her things and put them outside for her to see when she finally gets home. I went to the kitchen to get trash bags, and when I came out, Eva had already left for class. It only took me an hour to remove all of Audrey's presents from the apartment. Knowing that Audrey's first class today wouldn't start until 10:15, and assuming she'd be home before going to class, I settled in to wait for her to show up. She arrived at 9:40 and was surprised to see me. She came up to me and leaned over to kiss me and then asked, "When did you return home?" "Last night." "Why didn't you call me?" "I called, but you never answered." "Oh, shit." "I turned off my phone so we wouldn't be disturbed while we were studying." "While we were studying? Who are we?" "Some girls from my management and economics class. It was kind of like an overnight study." The lie rolled easily off her tongue, and if I hadn't seen what she did with my own eyes, I probably would have believed her. And then she asked, "What are those garbage bags by the door?" "These are all your things." "My stuff?" "Yes, Audrey, your things. I'm kicking you out of the apartment and out of my life." "You're not serious, are you? We love each other." "I can't speak for your lying ass, but my love for you died last night when I watched you and my idiot brother walk into room 107 at Saddletree. I got home just in time to see you get into Sam's car and then make out with the guy you told me you just couldn't stand because he was an arrogant asshole. After seeing this, I just had to follow you to see what was going on." She fell silent and looked at me for a few seconds, and then said, "Flat tires. Was it you?" I simply nodded my head affirmatively. "I guess I'd be wasting my time if I told you that you're the only one I love, and that Sam was just sex." "You would be right about that. I don't care why it happened. The only thing that matters is that you did it. I'm just glad I found out about you before I married you." When I said this, her whole behavior changed. She grinned at me and said, "I never intended to marry you. You were just something that got me through school. A constant and reliable source of sex and nutrition to get me through this. You don't make enough money and your manhood isn't big enough for me to commit myself to you forever." And with these words, she turned and headed towards the door. When she got to the door, she turned to me, gave me the finger, said, "Fuck you," and then walked away. As the door closed behind her, I muttered, "Damn, bitch." Hey, I was a guy, and if you really want to upset a guy, tell him his manhood is in pants that are a small size for her. Then I remembered how she acted whenever we had sex and realized that she was lying to me when she told me that my manhood was not big enough for her. She was either lying or the silver screen and Broadway stage were deprived of one of the greatest actresses to ever appear. Then I smiled, realizing that my male instrument was satisfying the one for whom it was intended, me. I showered and then slept for a couple of hours before getting up and going to work to turn in my trip paperwork. Then I went home, and when I got there, I saw that all of Audrey's things were gone. I made a meal out of the leftovers in the fridge and then decided to do away with the next annoying chore on my list. I headed to my parents' house, planning to visit my brother's apartment above the garage and let him know how unhappy I was with him. I went to the door and knocked. About a minute later, Sam opened the door and, seeing it was me, smiled and invited me in. The smile told me that Audrey hadn't called him to tell him they'd been caught. As a result, Sam still had a smile on his face when my right hand hit him in the jaw. He stumbled back and I followed him, kicking him in the groin. He fell to the floor and I kicked him a couple more times, and then I looked down at him and said, "In case you haven't figured it out yet, I know about you and Audrey. This is just an example of what I will do to you whenever you come near me from now on. I leave it up to you to explain to Mom and Dad why I never come to family functions when you are there." I turned and walked out of the apartment, leaving Sam lying on the floor, gasping for air. When I returned home, Ava was sitting at the kitchen table doing her homework. She looked up when I entered and said, "You did it. You really did it. You threw her out of here. Didn't I mean it when I told you I was going to do this? I knew you were upset, but I thought that since you love each other, you'll work things out somehow." "Not in this life, honey." "She called me. She wanted to know where I would live when you kicked me out. She couldn't believe you'd let me stay." I shrugged and said, "It's been a long, hard day, and I'm going to take a shower and go to bed." And I left her with her homework. And it was a long, hard day. From the moment I found out what was happening until I got into the shower, only a little over 24 hours passed. You'd think that after the day I'd have trouble sleeping, but I slept like a log. This morning I woke up to a conversation. I walked into the kitchen and found Sam there drinking coffee with Eve. "What the hell are you doing here?" I growled at him. "We need to talk, brother." "Why would I want to talk to a bastard like you?" "I need to tell you what happened." "And you think it will matter?" "You stabbed me in the back, you fucking asshole." "You do not understand. I had to do it." "Did you have to do this?" "This is what I need to hear." Eve stood up and said, "I'll leave you two to handle this." I had to go to class and she left. As soon as she walked out the door, Sam said, "Audrey made me do it." "Oh, for Christ's sake, Sam, do you think I'll believe such nonsense?" "This is true. She caught me doing something I needed to hide and threatened to expose me to Mom and Dad if I didn't do what she wanted." "What could it be? Fucking little boys?" "Close, but no, not this." "Close?" "She caught me kissing a guy." "I'm bi, bro. I go both ways. I'm not the only one she cheated on you with." "It happened during your trip to Baltimore. I was at a party thrown by a couple I knew who were bi and who were swinging. It was a party for like-minded people, and I was there with a guy I know when she walked in with another guy I know who is going both ways. She pretended she didn't know me, and we avoided each other all night. But it was impossible to ignore what she was doing. Half an hour after the party started, she was already pulling the train. Every guy there except me fucked her at least twice, some 3 times. The next day, she called me and said we needed to talk. We met at Bud's bar, and she told me everything. I do what she wants and when she wants. Otherwise, she would give me away to Mom and Dad. I couldn't let that happen. Mom would probably accept it, even if she didn't like it. But, you know Dad and how he feels about anyone who isn't 100% heterosexual. There was no way in hell I could let him find out about this. This woman was one sick bitch, bro. She enjoyed being able to control me. She didn't like me, but she enjoyed the fact that she could make me do whatever she wanted. You have no idea how many hours I spent trying to figure out a way to tell you what a bitch she was without exposing myself. And now I'm waiting for her to tell Mom and Dad just out of pure vindictiveness. At least you got rid of her. Audrey never called my parents, and Sam and I managed to mend our relationship. Eva lived with me for another 7 months, and no, I never touched her. Although Audrey continued to try to get her to join a sorority and live in the dorms, but Eva wanted no part of that kind of life. She eventually found a nice guy and moved in with him, but we remained good friends. I lost track of Audrey after I kicked her out, and a couple of times Eva tried to tell me about Audrey, but I refused to talk about it, and soon she received a message that I did not want to hear a single word about anything concerning her sister. Well, that's not entirely true. She told me about one thing Audrey was going to do, and I'm glad she did it. I managed to get inside without anyone recognizing me, and I sat in the back. This was my big chance to get back at Audrey, and I nearly wet my pants waiting to do it. I looked at the guy standing there and guessed that he must have money and the manhood size in his pants that Audrey required. I was really shaking in anticipation when this moment came, and I heard, "If there is anyone here who knows why these two people should not be united in holy matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace." I stood up and said, "Yes, I have. This bitch is a cheating slut. While she was engaged to me, she cheated on me with my own brother, and when I was out of town on business, she pulled trains with a bunch of guys and also got screwed by members of a swingers group." I turned to face the future groom and addressed him personally. "If you want this slut as your wife, that's your business. Just remember the axiom that once a cheater, always a cheater." And then, taking advantage of the stunning silence, I walked out of the church with my head held high and a big smile on my face, passing Audrey prostrate on the floor, sobbing in pain and humiliation. Life is beautiful and goes on.